Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Eric Delgado. I'm the Director of Sales here at Kavaliro, and we're really excited to welcome you all today. Today, we're actually going to be getting into the Salesforce Billing Journey of both Kavaliro and RightRev client Epicor. We're going to be talking about the what being their challenges. What were the business challenges that they faced that led to evaluating Salesforce Billing? We'll get into the why, as to why they selected Salesforce Billing, Kavaliro, and RightRev. And then we'll talk about how the project is going and the general expectations of a Salesforce Billing project. With that, we'll get into some introductions of our panel today. Well, actually, before we do that, we'll get into some the forward-looking statement. Obviously, with prospective Salesforce clients or existing Salesforce clients on the call today, we want to make sure that any forward-looking statements that you hear today, that there's, the influence on anything for your future purchasing decision is factored on what's available now, what's going on at Salesforce, and not necessarily what we're talking about coming down the line. And today we have a great panel for you. Leading the conversation today, we have both Serena Kasla, who is a Revenue Cloud Solution Engineer at Salesforce, as well as Jesse Smith, who is a Senior Solutions Consultant here at Kavaliro. Jesse is actually working firsthand with our star of the show today, our special guest, Praveen Kumar, who is the Senior Director of Business Intelligence at Epicor. Also on the call today, our Senior Vice President of Sales and Operations at Kavaliro, Miguel Boland, Alyssa Camarillo, RightRev's Director of Marketing, and myself, who you've met already, Eric Delgado, the Sales Director here at Kavaliro. And before we get into today's discussion, want to just share a little bit about RightRev. What is RightRev? Who is RightRev? RightRev offers automated revenue recognition within Salesforce Revenue Cloud. Salesforce customers can automatically generate revenue contracts from activated orders in CPQ and billing to run revenue recognition schedules. No integrations required. RightRev syncs natively with Salesforce Revenue Cloud. It gives you real-time visibility into bookings, billings, and revenue, allows customers to obtain an accurate picture of their financial health in a single platform. And Kavaliro, we are a Salesforce certified billing partner. We basically operate in 3 practice areas. We have our Revenue Cloud Advisory Group, where we get into future state analysis, current state analysis, road mapping, and technical architecture. We also have the implementation piece, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We are a multi-cloud partner, but our main specialty is Revenue Cloud. That's where we really shine. That's where the large bulk of our projects come from. As you see here, a sampling of some of our clients. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Epicor today, but you'll see the Salesforce logo here as well. We actually have implemented Salesforce Revenue Cloud for Salesforce. We're their customer, and they are our customer at the end of the day. So it's a big feather in our cap and a testament to the work that we do here. So we're excited to talk about that, and I'll turn it over to Serena to tell you a little bit more about Revenue Cloud.
Thanks, Eric. So wanted to share a little bit more background around Revenue Cloud. So essentially what it is, it's a product to cash solution designed to organize and help customers drive the profitable growth across any channel. So with Revenue Cloud, you can go to market with any type of revenue stream, including one-time sales, recurring revenue like subscriptions or usage-based products, or even milestone products or services. We can also help make it easier for reps to sell and easily create things like approvals and one-click quotes. We can improve cash flow generation with automated billing and collections built on Salesforce. And then lastly, we can reduce expenses by eliminating redundant systems and redundant integrations while centralizing all the product to cash data on Salesforce. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so essentially bringing your entire product to cash on a single platform. So CRM, CPQ, order management, billing onto a single platform. You're getting rid of the internal handoff and disjointed data between sales and finance. And then with Salesforce Revenue Cloud, your customers can be at the center of the revenue cycle. So you can grow your business powered by one product catalog, one price book that works across every channel and revenue model.
All right, with that, we can turn the conversation over to Jesse and Serena, as we will get a chance to talk to Praveen today. Praveen, obviously want to tee this up to you as well, if you'd like to provide a quick introduction beyond what I've already said today, but we can get into the discussion at hand.
Hey everyone, I'm as Eric mentioned, I work for Epicor as the Senior Director of Business Intelligence, and also co-leading a big transformation initiative here. I've been with Epicor for about 2 years now, and this project has been going on. It started when I came on board, and it's still going on, but we're pretty close to the finish line.
Great, thanks Praveen, and again, thank you for joining us today to share your experience. So one of the things I know about you is that this is not your first Revenue Cloud project at a sizable company. So could you kind of give us a little bit of background about some of the other work that you've done implementing Salesforce Lead to Revenue and the companies you work for in that effort?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Jesse mentioned, this isn't the first one. I think this is my 7th transformation project, where it's kind of really from quote all the way to cash. And prior to this, I'd worked at a few different companies, starting with Vista a few years back, which is where I kind of got introduced to some of these transformation projects. Worked on SaaS only companies, hardware and SaaS companies, and really transforming whole as far as from a lead all the way down to cash perspective. So a lot of experience with regards to Salesforce CPQ, different ERPs, different PSA tools, and really figuring out how to kind of integrate all those systems, build a strong foundation, and support the business model for the different companies. So overall, about 7 different transformations so far. And a lot of them have been more on the Salesforce side, and we've used experience with NetSuite or Oracle Fusion in the past as well, and various different revenue recognition tools with each of those companies.
Great. So let's move on from talking about yourself and let's talk about Epicor a little bit. What are the kind of primary service and product offerings that Epicor has as a company, and what different industry verticals do you support?
Yeah, so Epicor, I can think about them as 3 main products that we sell. We're primarily a ERP company, and we support manufacturing, distribution, lumber, auto, and retail verticals. So we have an ERP software for each one of those verticals. In addition to that, we also have increased our product portfolio through acquisitions over the last few years, and we have quite a few add-on products that work very well with our ERP. We have a CPQ solution, we have a BI solution, and it's just finding different products that we can sell specifically to kind of tuck in with our ERP products. In addition to that, we also sell a lot of third-party products that work very well with our ERP software. So those are kind of the 3 big gamuts, but we're primarily a ERP shop, and we support those 5 verticals I mentioned.
Great. And so kind of in your current state, and as you move in through this digital transformation, what are you currently using for your quoting, billing, and revenue recognition solutions today?
Yeah, good question. So our current system stack to support our quote to cash is Salesforce, Apttus for quoting. We have our own ERP software, Kinetic, that we use, and we use Softrack's billing for our recurring billing. So we sell, a big portion of our business is still perpetual with recurring maintenance. So for all of the recurring billings, we use Softrack's. And for our revenue recognition, we leverage something that's directly in E10, our ERP software, but doesn't meet all the requirements that we have today. So some of those revenue recognition things that we need to do is done outside of the systems today.
Praveen, can you highlight a couple of the business challenges that led you to revisiting your current solution?
Yeah. So, you know, when I came on board, it was almost 2.5 years ago now. Time really flies. You know, we looked at the business and we were kind of trying to understand, okay, how do we figure out how we can scale this business if we want to grow from where we're at, you know, by 2 or 3x. And one of the things we realized was that we had systems, but there was also a ton of manual processes that needed to happen. There was a lot of errors that were happening with regards to how we invoice the customers. And there was a lot of questions that came back to Epicor to say, hey, this is incorrect. And we had, you know, there was just a lot of manual challenges, like at every step of the way, from Aptus to E10 to SoftTrax, there was manual checkpoints that would just slow the, you know, process down. And we looked at it and it was a very simple thing as far as, hey, we can definitely figure out how to scale this better, automate a lot of the things from a logic perspective. But the other big challenge is that a lot of the business was very siloed, right? So Aptus was built in a silo, E10 was built in a silo, billing was built in a silo, revenue recognition was built in a silo. Not that it's incorrect, it's just how they built out these systems over a long period of time. It's a 50-plus-year-old company, so it's just how they built these systems in a long period of time. They just weren't interconnected as well as they could be. And when you're building out these different systems, I think it's really important to look at the full process end to end and figure out how to optimize and scale across the board, not just one system. So that's kind of what, you know, what led us to say, hey, I think there's a real, you know, easy way to kind of optimize this end-to-end flow, process flow, and have the systems support that process by, you know, making a lot of things more automated. Doesn't eliminate all the manual functions we have today, but eliminating a lot of the manual functions, you know, that can easily be automated, which will allow us to scale a little bit better. So we saw that at every, you know, every juncture, like from Aptus to E10 to SoftTrax, and then how it came back for revenue recognition. And we said that this was a you know, a must-have project where it's going to help Epicor.
Definitely having those manual processes and silo systems can affect productivity. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the evaluation process looked like? Why did you choose Salesforce Billing and RightRev?
Yeah, so, you know, specifically Salesforce Billing and RightRev, and I'll just talk to that a little bit. So we started off with Salesforce CPQ and Salesforce. So we knew that we were going to do that. The project started out as we are going to optimize quote to order, right? So quote to order basically meant everything that we would do in a quoting perspective, the account hierarchy, all that will be kind of as is, but we're going to clean up that process and we're going to do a phased approach. In doing that, there was a lot of changes we ended up having to do. For example, how we handle multi-year deals with APIs. How do we handle ramp discounts? How do we handle, you know, co-term contracts that need to happen, you know, throughout a customer's lifecycle? All these were just done very independently from each other today. So we were making a lot of these changes and we were trying to incorporate how E10 and SoftTrax billing would work with this new process of how data would be coming through from CPQ. About a year into the project, we recognized that, okay, we're making all these changes in E10, it's our product, we have the development staff for it, but we also recognize that there's a ton of changes that are going to get introduced into the billing platform, SoftTrax, and we had to make the very tough call to say, hey, do we spend the money to customize this tool that we know we're going to optimize in phase 2, or do we bring that into scope right now and tackle that, you know, that problem right now? So at that point, we said, okay, we're going to do billing and revenue recognition because that's a piece that's always been kind of a thorn in our side. When we did that, we knew there was going to be a budget increase, a timeline increase, but we went ahead and did a true RFP process. We looked at a few different applications, Salesforce Billing one of them, and from the revenue recognition side, we saw RightRev and RevPro. We looked at both products and we ultimately decided based on our requirements. I mean, the process we went through is here's kind of our billing requirements, here's kind of our revenue recognition requirements. We looked at the products and we decided to go with Salesforce Billing and RightRev. And I think, you know, for us, looking back at that decision, I think it was a good decision because one, we were bringing kind of a tight-knit ecosystem within the Salesforce world with regards to incorporating Salesforce billing for our billing engine. But from a functionality perspective, I think there was a lot of pluses and minuses with both the tools that we looked at for revenue recognition. I think the thing that led us over or pushed us over to RightRev is their integrations to Salesforce platform and how seamlessly it works with regards to incorporating Salesforce billing and integrating really well with CPQ. I mean, one of the biggest challenges we have today is, this is just not good practice, but it's allowable in our current system stack, right? Is creating an order in CPQ or an Aptus. I'm going to do a lot of other contract changes directly in our billing engine, right? And that our source of truth turned out to be, in theory, one system, but it turned out to be 3 or 4 systems in some cases. And that's a big challenge that we are tackling with this project, and we're putting a lot of governance in place. So the seamless integration with RightRev and CPQ and billing really makes our life a lot easier on how we will look at our future invoices, how we will look at our revenue waterfall, and we can trust the data that we're seeing in those systems to map to what was actually sold or what was actually changed on the Salesforce side. There's a lot of data integrity issues that we deal with today because of how there can be changes done across the multiple systems we have.
So throughout that digital transformation, how did you decide what was going to stay into Salesforce and what was going to stay in the ERP system?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I think the guiding principle for me was that let's leverage Salesforce CPQ for what it's meant for, quoting. Let's leverage billing for what it's meant for, invoicing, and not necessarily try and do a lot of things in different systems. I think in today's world, we leverage E10 for more than what it's intended to or what it should be. And same thing with SoftTracks. We use it for more than what it should be, which is primarily a billing engine, but we use it for our contract history as well. So it was really like, as we went through the different pieces of requirements, for example, a very simple thing that we are even talking about today during testing is our products. If we want to build them monthly, we don't need to set up their unit pricing as monthly unit pricing. That's a billing aspect of that product, right? So we said, hey, let's make sure that our products are set up as annual products, annual list prices, and then we can leverage the billing frequency, push that down to Salesforce billing, and billing will automatically be able to bill that out monthly to the customer, right? So it's kind of like changing a lot of the requirements that way to optimize each system, but still to work cohesively together to really fulfill Epicor requirements. So it's like there's been a constant discussion on how we should, change our processes to leverage and optimize, CPQ, billing, and RightRev to their max potential, but not necessarily doing anything custom. That was something very important to us.
Right, got you. Jesse, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so kind of jumping back to your role at Epicor, your primary role, right? Senior Director of Business Intelligence. What are some of your biggest goals in terms of the KPIs or reporting outcomes that you're looking to get out of this implementation that may be a bit of a pain today to identify?
I mean, ideally, we'd like to scale down our manual processes between the different handoffs. We would like to, this is phase 1, so we want to build a very strong foundation with regards to all these systems being integrated. And with any of these projects, the biggest challenge is going to be our install base. I feel like always, doing this 7 times, the new transactions always work well, but the first transaction that happens is going to be your, I want to do an add-on or I want to do a decommission. So, building a really strong foundation, knowing that there'll be errors, but building a strong foundation from a system integration perspective and really enhancing our processes throughout after go live is going to be the biggest key for us.
Yeah, so I guess as Salesforce would put it, getting that 360-degree view of your customer, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a big challenge. Right now we have a BI report for that, where you're seeing hey, let me see what contracts a customer owns, let me see what assets and subscriptions a customer owns. This is something that they should have at their fingertips because BI report only updates nightly. This is something that we feel sales should have at their fingertips. Sales should know what their renewal pipelines are. Sales should know what their pipeline activity looks like quarter over quarter with high level of accuracy. They should be able to know what the products were sold for, right? And what kind of discounting was given and how was the API factored in. All these things are takes a long time for us to report on, and also long time to kind of like implement. Something very simple like ramp deals or APIs are, involve a lot of manual touch. And as I'm sure the Salesforce team knows and the Kavaliro team knows, those are all things that can be scaled very easily by leveraging CPQ and billing correctly.
Yeah. So as solution architect on the project, I can say that Epicor is quite a complex business. You've got over 25 transacting legal entities. You operate in all, across the globe. You do business with, I believe, over 100 countries. With that complexity that Epicor has, what are some of the challenges maybe within the project that you feel we've encountered? Have there been any limitations that you've seen that you might want to call out for either Salesforce Billing or RightRev?
Yeah, I think, being a global company, there's a lot of global requirements that are not necessarily Epicor specific. They are, they're local country specific requirements regards to how we rev rec, what we show on an invoice, how we round, the numbers, how we show the taxes. So there's just been a lot of those scenarios where we've had to just kind of understand what to do and how to kind of, configure the system to support that. I think another big challenge we've had throughout has been SSP policies and like how we're going to be doing that in the Americas for our large business. The international team is planning to currently do that manually, but I think that's been a big challenge for us as well, is to try and understand, how we're going to be able to handle all that. Our product master is also very, very large. That supports, again, globally. We have a lot of different rules with regards to different verticals and different regions. So there have been a lot of challenges from the perspective of like, okay, well, the out of the box solution isn't going to work, right? And we've had to get creative with kind of how we can configure the system without putting too much complexity into it. So where is the balance of standardizing our process or standardizing our selling motions with this is absolutely required. We need to configure the system without, adding much more administrative or technical debt that we need to support after we go live. So that's been a big challenge, and like I said, I mentioned a couple of things where we've had issues because we're an international company as far as like selling between different legal entities. We have a lot of legal entities we support today. So how do the accounts get set up to ensure that there's automation, with regards to which legal entity you're selling to? Got to make sure you don't sell into the wrong legal entity, how that gets integrated over. There's just a lot of things like that we've had to deal with. And there's also been some limitations with regards to how we need to send information to E10 as well, which is our ERP product that we're leveraging. I will say where we stand today, it's not that we're stuck in the water for any of those solutions. We've had to come up with a solution, whether it be changing our process or configuring the system. But there's never a dull day here at Epicor with regards to any of these challenges coming up.
Great. And, again, I think I can speak to current state versus future state. One kind of big win that I would see is that Epicor's invoice output, when we first entered Discovery, we found that they had, I believe it was 19 templates for generating your invoice outputs, and we have reduced that down to 3 in your current implementation. So there's been some big wins there. I think another example is, a single given SKU from a RightRev revenue recognition perspective may have multiple revenue entries where you're accelerating a portion of that revenue, which lands in one revenue account versus the ratable piece, right? Which is amortized over the life of the contract, and that goes to a different GL account. So there have been some wins along the way that I can speak to, and hopefully you're satisfied with the solutions we provided up to this point. I've got one more question. Speaking of integrations, how seamless has the integration between Salesforce and the Revenue Cloud been with the other platform applications that you plan to maintain or any third-party applications that you plan to have in your future state?
Yeah, I think, I guess to simply answer that question, it has been very good so far, right? And the reason I say that, or I hesitate a little bit, is that it's been very good because of how we've defined our process and how things need to work post this project go live, right? There's a lot of changes from a process perspective that we are pushing and instituting post go live, mainly to keep this integration seamless, mainly to make sure we don't introduce complexity that's going to make the system break down. And that's not to say that the system integration can't handle complexity. It's more of the complexity that I'm talking about requires a lot of manual input or manual touch, like a human touch. And we've tried to automate a lot of that in CPQ or in billing. So I personally think that the integration where it stands today, we are headed in the right direction as far as when we go live. This is what I would expect in a scalable company of how we should be integrating between CPQ and the Revenue Cloud environments. It's posed a lot of challenges with regards to our install base migration, as you guys can imagine, because there's a transformation in how we're interpreting the data coming into CPQ that goes into RightRev or Salesforce Billing. But it's with the hope that the process, the end-to-end process, is going to be exactly what we want, and it's going to minimize issues after we go live. Because there's a ton of issues today as far as invoices not matching the quote, or we have a lot of challenges with regards to how the product even got posted in the invoice, and hence there's a lot of credits being issued. All of these things is what we're trying to eliminate by kind of standardizing the process and really streamline the integration. That way, there's always a match between what got into billing, what got into RightRev, with what happened on the quoting engine, which is not there today. And that's a big, big win for Epicor.
Great. Well, I think I've run out of questions for now. Serena, unless you've got any, I think we might turn to the audience to see if any of you have any questions for Praveen today.
I think we might have a couple in the
That's
chat.
fine.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in, Eric here. Yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll go through and get to those questions for you.
Yep, it looks like we have one question so far. I can go ahead and read it off. Can you talk a little bit about your transaction volume and the confidence in the suite of solutions to be able to handle your complexity/volume?
Yeah, so our volume is similar to a lot of other hardware or perpetual product companies. It's kind of like a J curve. At the end of every quarter, we have tons of volume that happen in the last 2 days. In a given year, we have, I think the invoice runs, we run over 1 million lines in a given day. Towards the end of the quarter, usually it's up to like 1 million or 1.5 million lines that we run, which is not kind of like a surprise. It could be a lot higher at fiscal year end. And as far as our install base goes, a typical order for us, like a transaction order, would have anywhere between 200, 300 lines. And in a given quarter, we have about 300 to 400 orders. That's not just quotes, but just orders. And again, this changes. Our highest volume, which is Q4, which just ended, we had over 550 transactions. And you can extrapolate that out with regards to the number of lines that get processed. It's about, a little over 100,000 lines. So. And one thing I would add to that, that just thought about is all of our testing that we've been doing in the new platform. We have been doing heavy invoice batches. Jesse, you could talk a little bit about that as well, as far as what we were concerned about, right? We recently just did a full data migration of our install base, which is about 43,000 contracts. And I think we had over 1.7 million lines that went through the orders, order processing, invoicing, and revenue contract lines. So definitely high volume, and it was a coordinated effort between all the implementation partners, but we were able to get that done in about, I think it was 3.5 weeks, 3.5 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, so to that point, One interesting thing about our approach to data migration is that the migration team is loading in quotes and quote lines, and we're actually relying on our billing and RightRev implementation to process those orders, generate revenue contracts, generate CPQ contracts, and then subsequently we're doing a catch-up invoicing utilizing Salesforce Billing to bring all of those migrated records into their current state. And at our peak, to speak to the numbers, we did one of our billing runs was, I think Salesforce recommends in a general billing run that you don't exceed, I think, 200,000 order products in a given run. I'll say we did exceed it. The billing run did complete and generated over 1 million invoice lines. So we've definitely tested the scale of both Salesforce Billing and RightRev just within the context of data migration.
Great, that's awesome to hear. It looks like there's one more question from the audience. Obviously, ultimately you ended up selecting Kavaliro, but what are the important factors when looking for an implementation partner to help you implement these solutions?
Yeah, I think, I've worked with a few different implementation partners before, specifically for Revenue Cloud as well as CPQ. I think the most important thing is their understanding of the system requirements and how they're able to problem solve the solutions within CPQ or Revenue Cloud. That's something I found very strong within the Kavaliro team specifically, but also in other partners that we work with. That's usually been a guiding factor for me to kind of either pick them or not to work with. The knowledge on the tool, the experience on how long they've worked on it, what are some of the complex problems they've tried to solve, because no project is ever going to be so easy and it's going to be out of the box, right? There's going to be stuff where we're going to have to always problem solve, come up with creative solutions. I think that's where there's high importance in kind of picking an implementation partner. The other aspect of picking a right implementation partner is someone who's not just going to go and do everything that the customer asks for. That's not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just more of we rely on implementation partners to bring best practices to us. We rely on implementation partners because they've done this so many times. They've seen different flavors of it. We'd want them to be, guiding the companies to the right solution, whether it be a tough decision with the process change or, something that they should avoid doing, saying that here's the challenges you will have moving forward when we're not here. So I think that relationship with the implementation partner is extremely key to kind of have that openness and transparency to really have that honest conversation of what is the right thing to do here? How has this been done before? This is not a Epicor only problem. How do you solve these issues with other companies? And really understanding the different solutions, getting a recommendation, and then ultimately, allowing the company to make that decision and then executing on that in a timely fashion is also key. So having that strength and knowledge and partnerships with Salesforce and other, other companies where they've done large size projects is key, but also having the, the strength in meetings to kind of bring up, hey, this is a big issue for you guys and here's why, right? Not just going off of requirements, but really partnering with the company to understand what they're trying to solve and how can I provide creative solutions to achieve that, because it's not always going to be a simple project.
Got it. Looks like we have one more. Can you talk a little bit about the flexibility that you were looking for, and obviously the flexibility required around the solutions, CPQ, billing, RightRev, giving the history of Epicor?
Yeah, so I would say that almost every requirement that we have has not transformed to be so rigid now that we're doing this project, right? There's almost flexibility on a lot of things that we're doing. A simple example is we send out invoices before the contract ends, but we have a lot of customers that send it on a particular day after 6 months. We have some customers that send it on the 14th day of the next month for billing in the arrears. So it's not that, we always have like, hey, we're going to standardize down to net 30, 60, 90, 120. We had to come up with a solution for how we can kind of handle this. And we did. We came up with a scalable automated solution for this. that we just recently tested, and it's working well. But I think there's a lot of situations like that across our company. Another example is having the ability to update concurrent users versus non-concurrent like products, how we would update that, how we would mass update discounts on a large quote, how we can even uplift list price, because it's a practice that we do today, because we don't have like a set price list, so different regions have different type of pricing. And even on top of that, we might need to modify some list pricing or some discounting. So we've tried to standardize the process on our end, but that's not been always the case. And the system has had to be tweaked or configured to allow for some flexibility for how we actually, send out quotes. One example that I can say where we didn't keep the flexibility is today we kind of have this thing called commercial terms, where we can provide kind of details that impact the quote and the total contract value, but doesn't necessarily go on the quote. Not that it's a bad thing. I think that's great on how we're kind of presenting that to the customer, and it's clear and visible to the customer. But in the future, those are all being transitioned into a selling motion to really ensure better accuracy for our quoting and how it gets into billing and how it gets into right rev. There isn't a lot of manual steps there. So not saying that it eliminates the flexibility. I think we're just handling those requirements a little differently than, providing the same level of flexibility they had today. So in certain cases, it's a little bit more rigid, but there's also cases where we've had to leave it as is today and just tweak the systems to support it.
Looks like those are the only questions submitted today. I want to thank everybody for attending, and especially our panelists, Praveen, Jesse, Serena. Thank you all so much. I hope everybody found this webinar informative. Hope you learned a lot. If you have any other questions that we didn't get around to today, contact information for either RightRev, Kavaliro is on the screen. We hope everybody has a great Q4, and thank you for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.